You know when you have one of those nights where you get home from work and you decide that you're too tired to cook anything, so you're just gonna heat something up, and then suddenly it's an hour later and your lasagna still isn't done, and you decide, well, it didn't reach 165, but it's probably not gonna kill me if it was at like 148, because it held at 148 for a while. So the bacteria is probably dead. Because, you know, 165 is just what it needs to be at to kill all bacteria, but as long as it kills like most of it, I'm probably fine. Me too. So anyways, I have a caffeinated sparkling water with me, brand covered because no free promotion, and I'm gonna hope that I make it through this video, and if I don't, I will come back on another night and finish it up. So here we go. I've been consuming quite a bit of queer media recently, and it kind of came from I'm just so bored of watching the same two shows, Gravity Falls and Bob's Burgers. Are there other shows? Yeah, of course. Do I want to watch them? Not really. I want to watch Gravity Falls and Bob's Burgers. But eventually you get tired of watching Gravity Falls and Bob's Burgers over and over again, so you decide that you want to watch something else. I wanted to watch media that involved members of the communities that I am a part of. So I decided to seek out some queer media. Most of what I have watched recently has been things that I have seen before, but that's fine, because as you can kind of tell from me watching Gravity Falls and Bob's Burgers, I enjoy watching the same thing over and over again. So today I'm going to be talking about 6 queer movies that I've watched recently, as well as one book that one of the movies is based off of. And I do have a little spoiler sign with me that I plan on holding up if there's anything that I think would spoil the movie, just in case anyone does actually want to watch any of these movies later. The very first movie that I'm going to be reviewing today, it came out in 2019, and it is titled Adam. If you try and find this on IMDb, you're going to have a difficult time because it brings up just a bunch of actors named Adam, and there are actually other films also named Adam. So it took me a while to find the right one. This movie came out, like I said, in 2019, and on IMDb it is rated 4.3 stars out of 10, which is not very good. It also didn't have a rating like PG-13R. Many of these movies that I'm reviewing, they specifically said not rated. This one just didn't have anything. I'm not sure if that is different than an NR, a not rated movie. Someone can let me know. So the movie Adam, this revolves around a high school boy named Adam. His sister is a lesbian and she is living in New York City, and he decides that he's going to come out to New York City for a summer and spend the summer with her. It is interesting to watch this little journey because he is a cisgender, heterosexual, white man. And he is trying to interact with all of these people, all of his sister's friends, but because she is queer, her friend circle is very queer, very gay-friendly. There are a lot of trans people, there are people with different ethnicities, and Adam doesn't know how to deal with that. So he finds himself in these situations where he is trying to understand what's happening around him, but it's like so far out of left field for him. One of the very early scenes in the movie is they go to a watch party for the TV show The L Word, and so he's sitting there watching a trans person, well, someone portray a trans person in the TV show The L Word, and there are people behind him talking about how the depiction of the trans character in The L Word is so unrealistic, and they're comparing it to their own life experiences. He doesn't know what trans is, so he's sitting there and he's like, they leave this watch party of The L Word, and he says something, like he asks a question that is so offensive, but he doesn't know that it's offensive because he doesn't know anything about the trans community. So he asks this question, and his sister and her friends immediately shut him down, and they're like, oh my god, you can't say that. That is so offensive. I can't believe that you would say that. He feels bad, and that's kind of it. So the whole movie revolves around Adam, and there's one point where they go to a party and he meets this girl named Jillian, and he's like instantly drawn to her, and there are these awkward scenes where he like goes up to her and he's like, I want to talk to you, and she's like, about what? And he says like, I don't know. So they chit chat for a while, and Jillian comes forward and says that she is a lesbian, but she understands that he is a trans man. He's not. But she's still interested in pursuing him. She says that like she doesn't want to invalidate his identity as a trans man, but she does want to be with him. So the bulk of the movie is surrounding this relationship between Adam and Jillian. And Adam, instead of saying, oh, I'm actually not trans, he goes, yeah, I'm trans. I'm trans. I've been trans the whole time. And he takes it upon himself to learn about the gay community, the trans community, all of the LGBT community, so he can keep up this lie that he is transgender because he wants to be with Jillian. This is bad. This is harmful. This is, oh my goodness. My biggest complaint about this movie is that we're supposed to understand that Adam goes through all this character development because at the end of the movie he's interacting with people who have different genders, different sexualities from him, and he's not being like terribly offensive. And so we are supposed to believe that through his time in New York over the past few months, he has really grown to love and care for the queer community. But the entire time, he is living a lie that he is transgender. He's searching things like, what is top surgery? And then he searches top surgeons in the area that he lives in, so he can say, yeah, I went to this particular surgeon for my top surgery, even though he never had top surgery, because he is a cisgender man. The whole I am lying about everything because I want to be with this girl goes on for far too long. If you want us to believe that your character has grown to really love the queer community, they would not keep up this lie for so long. I understand that it's absolutely scary to be like, hey, so actually I've been lying to you for months now and I am in fact not a trans man. I can't imagine being in that situation, but one, he shouldn't have been in the situation to begin with, because what a ridiculous thing to lie about. And two, once he started to realize, like, hey, I actually really like you. I enjoy spending time with you. I enjoy spending time with your friends and getting to know all your friends. He maybe should have thought, you know what? I have done something bad. I should admit that I have done something bad. I should learn from my mistakes and I should move on. That doesn't happen. So I think the biggest issue with this film is he's supposed to have grown to love the queer community, but he is still actively, like, being pretty harmful to the queer community by living this lie. The other thing that I think is really, really dangerous about this film, and this is where we will have some spoilers, so I'll sit here and I'll hold this little sign. Adam does eventually come clean. He tells Jillian, I am not actually trans. I'm sorry I lied to you. I am a cis man. Sorry. And in this interaction, Jillian says, that's okay, I know. And he's like, what do you mean you know? She said, I've known for a while. Like, you went from knowing absolutely nothing about trans people or the LGBT community to knowing, like, a lot about trans people in the LGBT community. You never talked about being transgender, which I said that you didn't have to, but it's kind of odd that, like, it never came up. And in this moment, there is a scene where Adam and Jillian are walking through a forest, and Jillian screams, like, out into the forest, like, to let it out, I'm bisexual. And then afterwards, Adam shouts, I'm a cisgender man. The thing that I hate, I despise about this moment is the way that this reduces, it doesn't even really reduce, it entirely erases the lesbian identity. The entire movie, the whole plot is Jillian is a lesbian. Jillian's backstory is that when she was in high school, she wanted to go to prom with a girl, and then it made, like, national news that she couldn't go to prom with a girl because she was also a girl. Her entire story is, I am a lesbian, and I am a lesbian. In the lesbian community, you're gonna get a lot of discourse about if it's okay for a lesbian to call themselves a lesbian and date a transgender man. Because some people worry that it's invalidating the trans man's identity because you are a lesbian, which is supposed to be not about men, but you are dating a man. Something that I think is missing in that conversation is that that man, for many years, was raised and socialized as a woman. So a lot of the life experiences are shared, even though the experience right now is so incredibly different. I think it's okay for trans men to want to seek community in lesbians because there is often a lot of overlap in those life experiences. Like I said, you'll get a lot of discourse about if it's okay for lesbians to date trans men. It's so not what the queer community needs to be focused on, that particular discourse. The issue I have is that Adam is not trans. Adam is a cis man. Jillian has known for a while now that Adam is a cisgender man. And the realization that she comes to is, I must be bisexual. And I think this completely invalidates the lesbian experience of lesbians aren't attracted to cisgender men. This is saying, really, the whole plot of the movie is leading up to, well, Jillian was a lesbian, but actually she wasn't. She just needed to meet the right man so she could admit to herself that she was bisexual. I think this is very dangerous for both the lesbian community and the bisexual community because this is horrible representation for both of them. Pretty much the only positive thing that I can say about this movie, which I do think is a very good positive, is that they hired visibly queer and trans actors to portray visibly queer and trans characters. They hired people actually within the community to portray that community. This is something that happens a lot in popular media, is instead of hiring a queer actor to play a queer character, they hire just like the most well-known person. I have a few examples written down here. So, for example, in the movie The Imitation Game, which is about Alan Turing, who was a real person, a real gay man, they hired Benedict Cumberbatch, who is in fact not a gay man. In the 2015 movie The Danish Girl, they hired Eddie Redmayne to play a trans woman, when Eddie Redmayne is in fact a cisgender man. Even in something like The L Word, which was a TV show dedicated to showing the connection of the lesbian community, you have maybe like 4 actresses who are gay. I saw a quote from Jennifer Beals, who plays Bette Porter in The L Word, she played Bette Porter when she is in fact straight, and this quote was like, I feel like an honorary member of the gay community. And I understand what she's saying, and at the same time, like, we really couldn't hire any more gay actors to play Bette Porter. I think Jennifer Beals did a great job, but she is not gay. So I think it is very meaningful that in the movie Adam, you have actual gay actors playing actual gay characters, showing you that you don't need to hire just some straight person that people know. You can leave it up to the gay people to tell gay stories. The visibility is really important. I can recognize that the visibility is good, the representation is there. The movie itself is bad. The movie is a very difficult watch. I would rate this movie a 3 out of 10. I actually tried to write a review on IMDb and it didn't get approved, and I was like, I wonder why. And I read that they said in their like user guidelines, you can't review something about like how the actors look. So I was like, oh, maybe it was because I said this thing about how the actors are all like, they actually cast queer actors to play queer characters. So I took that part out of my review, resubmitted it, and it got declined again. So you won't find my review on IMDb, but here it is. The movie Adam, 2019, unrated, non-rated, I don't know the proper term, bad. I would not recommend. With the movie Adam, you do have representation of the queer community, which I think is really important. Something which I think is arguably more important is the representation that you'll find in this next movie, the 2004 movie Saving Face. This movie is rated R, and on IMDb it has a 7.4 out of 10, so it's rated a lot higher than Adam, which I think is good, I think is accurate, I think is correct. The movie Saving Face follows Will, who is a Chinese American. She is a doctor, I believe she's supposed to be a surgeon, and her pregnant mother moves in with her. At the same time, Will starts a relationship with a woman named Vivian. So the whole movie is Will and Vivian are having this relationship. Will is pretty busy because she's a surgeon. Her girlfriend Vivian is also pretty busy. She is a dancer, like a ballet dancer. And Will's life is kind of falling apart because now her mother is living with her mother is pregnant, everything that she knows is turned on its head. I really enjoyed this movie. In addition to showing queer characters, I think it's so important that this film also shows queer characters of color. Pretty much all of the main characters in this film are Chinese. So you're getting 2 Asian women who are having a loving relationship with each other, and that's not something that you get every day. A lot of queer stories, especially Western queer stories, are white people. So there's not a lot of representation that you'll find, especially, I think this is fairly good representation. I cannot speak to how accurate this is to, like, Chinese American culture because I don't know anything about Chinese American culture. What I can say is I can appreciate what it's doing even if I cannot speak to its accuracy. Something that I do really appreciate about this film, which I think would be a turnoff for a lot of people, which is a shame, is that so much of it is in Chinese. because our characters are Chinese Americans. Many of the characters are supposed to be immigrants, and so they have come from China to the United States. Of course they're going to speak Chinese. This is going to be such a niche reference. There's a scene in the Pink Panther with Steve Martin where he has been trying to interview a woman who speaks only Chinese. And someone asks him, "Do you speak Chinese?" And he goes, "Of course I speak Chinese." Anyways, now that I've told you all about Steve Martin and the Pink Panther, I really like this film switches between Chinese and English so much. Everything that's in Chinese is subbed. There are subtitles into English, so you can still follow what's happening even if you do not speak Chinese, like Steve Martin and the Pink Panther. Part of the reason that I really like this is it reminded me of something that I read in college. There was a scholar whose name was Gloria Anzaldúa, and she was a scholar of feminist studies as well as Chicana studies. One of Gloria Anzaldúa's more famous pieces is called How to Tame a Wild Tongue, and it's a piece of prose where she talks about the experience of being at the dentist and the dentist saying, "We need to do something about your tongue because the tongue is like in the way. It's too wild." And she goes on to talk about the experience of being Latina and how the language that she speaks is a mix of English and Spanish, and that's very important to her because that is the language of those who are all around her. The people who surround her communicate through this language, which isn't quite English and isn't quite Spanish. It's more of a Spanglish. And it's really important to her. It's part of her identity, being able to speak this language. And it's also so polarizing because she's in the United States, and if she's speaking this language, all of the English-speaking people are like, "That's not English." And if she's with people who speak Spanish, they're like, "That's not true Spanish. What you're speaking is wrong." So that's the idea of How to Tame a Wild Tongue. Her tongue is wild. It is not what it is expected to be. It's not English nor Spanish. So a quote that I would like to share from How to Tame a Wild Tongue is this one. Quote, "Until I am free to write bilingually and to switch codes without having always to translate, while I still have to speak English or Spanish, when I would rather speak Spanglish, and as long as I have to accommodate the English speakers rather than having them accommodate me, my tongue will be illegitimate." The idea behind this quote is that she sees her language as illegitimate. She sees Spanglish as not an acceptable option because it's not fully Spanish, it's not fully English. It is so important to her, but it's not seen as acceptable. And she wants so badly to be able to just speak the way that she speaks. She wants to write the way that she writes, which is going to be in this half English, half Spanish language, because that is so central to her identity. She wants to live her life as fully and authentically as she can. And part of that is language. And that is what I love about Saving Face. We get the experience of they're not fully speaking English, they're not fully speaking Chinese, they're switching between the two because that is so central to their experience. And the film is doing all of this. It's having all of this representation of the Chinese community. It's having all of this representation of Chinese Americans speaking Chinese as well as English and some mix of the two. And it's still so light. The whole film isn't just like the experience of immigrating to the United States as a Chinese person. Sure, that's mentioned, but it's not the primary focus. The primary focus is on Will and Vivian are having this relationship. They haven't really told anyone about it, so they're kind of sneaking around, and it's so funny. It's so light. They're having these moments that the audience knows what's happening. The main characters know what's happening. Everyone around the main characters doesn't know. And so we're all kind of like waiting in suspense, like, oh, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? Are they gonna find out about the relationship? Oh, it's so silly because now the mother is pregnant instead of the daughter. Like, what's going on? I loved this. On a scale of 1 to 10, I would rate this movie an 8. And I think that's really good considering it came out in 2004. This came out in 2004 and we're getting representation of Asian lesbians that isn't fetishized. We're getting representation of this Chinese American community when so much of our media is focused on white people. And it's just like wholesome. This is like the rom-com that you want to watch when you want to watch a rom-com. Sure, it may take a little bit more brain power to watch because you also need to read the subtitles. Unless you do in fact speak Chinese, then I'm sure it would make perfect sense. but I think it was a really good watch. I am glad that I watched this film. On the topic of lightness, the next kind of light movie that I want to talk about is Bloomington. And I do actually have a full review of this video on my channel already, but I wanted to discuss it again. So the movie Bloomington came out in 2010. On IMDb, it has a 5.7 out of 10, and it is another non-rated film. This movie follows Jackie and Catherine. Jackie is a ex-film star, ex-TV star. She was a child acting star, and now she is in college. Catherine is a professor at the university that she teaches at. They have an affair. I guess it's not really an affair because neither of them is in a relationship, but it's supposed to be like, you know, a taboo teacher-student relationship. I have so many thoughts. I have so many thoughts on this film. The thing that I think people like about this is that it is supposed to be one of these lighter films. It's not filled and just soaked with trauma like you'll find in a lot of lesbian media. It's two women who are, for the most of the film, happy. Which is, like, the bare minimum. It's like the bare minimum. I think a big issue with the film is kind of a combination of two things. They're happy, but they don't really seem connected with each other. None of the characters really have any sort of chemistry with each other. So we're expected to believe that it's supposed to be like a hot and heavy relationship between the two, which you don't get that at all. And also, like, you don't really believe that they're even in a relationship because they don't have any sort of chemistry with each other. And the other thing, beyond the lack of connection, is that this film takes absolutely zero risks ever. There is, in the blooper reel, there is a cut to the director who says, quote, "Directing the sex scenes was frickin' uncomfortable." My reaction to hearing that is, I can understand why it would be uncomfortable to direct a sex scene. I probably wouldn't want to do that, and if I did, I would probably be pretty uncomfortable. But the thing is, none of the sex scenes are really, like, sex scenes. Like, you don't see the characters having a deep, intimate, physical relationship. You see the characters laying in bed next to each other, chit-chatting. And I said this in my longer review. Yes, sex can look different to different people. It can mean different things to different people. But I don't think in anyone's definition what we're seeing could be considered sex. They don't really touch each other. They just lay next to each other and just, like, again, chit-chat. I also don't think they take enough risks with the plot. The whole plot is Jackie and Catherine are in this relationship, which is so taboo because they're a teacher and a student and there's such a big age gap between them, so no one can find out about the relationship. But neither of them talk to anyone. There's no risk ever that anyone's gonna, like, walk in or see them. They don't go out in public. They just sit in Catherine's home for most of the film. The whole film is so nothing. I do think it's an important, I don't want to say cornerstone because that puts far too much pressure on it. I think it is an important part of queer media because it is one of those lighter films. Like I mentioned in my longer review, this is something which passes the Bechdel test, which, again, the bar is on the floor. I do think that this film has a place. There are a couple scenes that I really enjoy. There are a couple scenes that the people on Tumblr really enjoyed. But overall, it's just, like, fine. It's fine. They don't take any risks. They don't show a deep, intimate relationship like they are alleging they're showing. It's just kind of two people sort of have a relationship that's, like, supposed to be deep, but it's not really actually that deep. This is something that I would say is very frustrating. This is a frustrating watch because you want so badly for it to be good, and it's just okay. It's fine. On a scale of 1 to 10, I rate Bloomington a 6. It's fine. It's not great. Don't get your hopes up. It is a lighter film. No one dies. It's not soaked in trauma, so I think it's worth something. Not much, but something. And if you do want more thoughts on that film, I have a nearly 30-minute review, which goes more in depth about that. Anyways, the next film that I would like to talk about on the topic of teacher-student relationship is Loving Annabelle. Loving Annabelle came out in 2006. It is another non-rated film, and on IMDb it has a 6.2 out of 10. It's actually rated higher than Bloomington. That's shocking. And at the same time, I can kind of understand why. Loving Annabelle follows Annabelle, and Simone. So Annabelle is a troubled teen who is going to this Catholic girls' school because she has, like, caused so much. Her mom's a senator, or like a state senator, some political person. So she's caused so many issues as the state senator's daughter that she's now being shipped off to Catholic school. Simone is a teacher at the Catholic school, and this film explores the taboo relationship between an underage schoolgirl and her adult teacher. So I did mention this film in my review of the movie Bloomington, and I said that I think that Loving Annabelle shows a better depiction of the actual, like, tension and stress that comes along with, I would imagine, a taboo relationship between a teacher and student. You get the whole movie where you're like, no, that's not happening, that can't happen, that cannot happen because they're a teacher and a student and she's underage. I will say that I think Loving Annabelle does a better job than Bloomington at taking risks, because the relationship itself is already so much riskier, because not only are we talking about a teacher-student, we're talking about a minor. And I guess you could probably argue that Annabelle's not a minor, but, like, she's in high school. She is most likely, for at least part of the film, a minor. There's also, this weird relationship, which is, it's so bizarre. The, like, headmistress at the school is, we learn eventually, Simone, the teacher's aunt. So they know each other because she is her aunt. And there are a few scenes where they build up this sort of sexual tension between them, which, that's definitely a risk. Like, we're already talking about a film where a teacher is going after a minor student. Well, sort of. A teacher is trying to shut down a minor student coming after her. But now also the teacher, there's some sort of weird incestuous undertones in this relationship with her aunt. What is happening there? It's a risk. I'll give them that. It is definitely a risk. One of the things that really bothers me about this film, aside from everything that I just said, is that there is a deleted scene where Annabelle is in a pool and Simone comes up and sits on the edge of the pool and is like, hey, you can't be out here this late at night. Annabelle gets out of the pool and just sits next to her, just sopping wet, and puts her hand on her thigh. And Simone goes, good night, Annabelle, and gets up and leaves. That scene in particular doesn't bother me, it's the director's commentary. So the director did commentary on the deleted scene and said that she would have liked to have kept this in the film, but the reason that she didn't is because, quote, I feel like as a teacher it made me lose respect for Simone, watching this scene play out the way that it played out, because she feels like Simone as a character wouldn't have just, like, kind of brushed it off. She would have shut it down entirely. So you're losing respect for her as a teacher because what are you doing? My issue is that there are so many other points in the movie where you lose respect for Simone, but they're still kept in the movie. There's one scene where Annabelle and Simone are both left at school over spring break. Annabelle is sitting on some sort of grassy area, and Simone comes over and joins her, and they are very obviously flirting with each other, and Annabelle asks, do you want to get out of here? And Simone says, I can't take my students off campus. And then suddenly they're driving off campus. I kind of lose a lot of respect for Simone in that moment, because now it's not just Annabelle is making a move on her teacher, it is Annabelle is making a move on her teacher and Simone is reciprocating that and now taking her student off campus to God knows where to go do God knows what. Again, it's a risk. It definitely is a risk. I give them props for making risky decisions. I question pretty heavily a lot of the decisions that they made, but they made them. Another issue that I have with this film is that the timeline is kind of all over the place. There is a director's commentary where the director is talking all about how so many scenes were rearranged, they were reordered, they cut so many different plot lines because she felt it was getting too convoluted. Which I do think is interesting because the film is not very long. It's like less than an hour and a half. It's like maybe an hour 15. So they cut all of these scenes, all of these plot lines, and the things that they did shoot, they rearranged a lot. So a lot of the plot line seems like kind of like, what's happening here? Like, we're just really jumping around. There was one scene in particular where Simone is in a relationship with a man, and she breaks up with the man. And later, she sees the same man again, because it's not worth going into. She sees the same man again. And they're having this conversation where he's like, how have you been? In the director's cut, we find out that this scene where Simone breaks up with the man was supposed to happen like 40 minutes earlier, which when the movie's only an hour 15, 40 minutes earlier is a long time. But really the scene happened when it happened, and so now everything is all convoluted. The character development just doesn't make a lot of sense because the time that has passed isn't enough for what we're watching to make sense. And this was also a very low budget film, so it seemed that they had like 3 outfits for the characters. So some of the scenes you can't even tell where exactly in the story they're supposed to be taking place, because you're like, wait a minute, she was wearing that outfit like 4 scenes ago, but that was supposed to be like 8 days ago, so huh? The film at its core is not well done. And a few things to take into consideration. It was a very low budget film. In the director's commentary, they talk about how like, we needed to be out of this place at like 10, or we were going to be charged a lot of money and we couldn't afford to pay them more money. So we were shooting our scenes at like 9:45 and just hoping we didn't get kicked out because we couldn't afford to pay them more. So it was very low budget. It was shot very quickly. I don't know how long a film normally takes, but they said this was shot in just a few weeks. And also the person who they hired to play Simone, they hired her like 3 days before filming started. So a lot of things to take into consideration with how the film came out. I do think the actress who played Simone did like an incredible job considering how late she came on. At its core though, the film is not very good from the perspective of film, which, like Bloomington, saying the film is not very good is like a pretty big part of reviewing the film. There are some things about this film that I like, which I can't even really articulate it. I'm so far into all of the bad things about this film. On a scale of 1 to 10, I give this a 5. It's not very good. It's pretty bad. I would also say it's pretty harmful, and I wouldn't recommend anyone watch it, because again, we are talking about a teacher and a student, and that student is a child. Save 15. Whew. I'm halfway through my caffeinated sparkling water. I'm losing my voice. I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna try. On the topic of a movie that takes risks, I want to talk about this next movie next. What a concept. I want to talk about the 2010 movie Elena Undone. This movie, like I said, came out in 2010. On IMDb, it has a 6.1 out of 10, and it is another non-rated film. Elena Undone follows 2 characters, Elaina and Peyton. So Elaina is a housewife, she's married to a pastor, she has a son, she's involved in her church, and she used to be a photographer. Our other main character is Peyton. Peyton is a writer, and Peyton is gay. Peyton and Elaina have very different backgrounds, so they normally wouldn't, like, interact with each other. Their lives don't intersect, but they do in this movie. So in this movie, Elaina and her husband Barry are trying to conceive a child, and it's not going well. So they decide, okay, instead of conceiving, we're going to adopt. Peyton fairly recently got out of a long-term relationship, and her mother also just passed away, and she says, well, you know what's going to make me whole? A child. So she also decides that she is going to adopt. The two run into each other at an adoption event, and that is where our movie starts. They meet at this adoption event, and they just have like one interaction where Elaina puts her keys down and they can't find them, and then Peyton's like, hey, are these your keys? And then they exchange business cards. Because Peyton is a writer, and she says, I'm always looking for photographers. You're a photographer, can I get your business card? And it definitely has nothing to do with the fact that she's really attracted to her and she would really like to get to know her as a person. Later on, Peyton's friend, Wave, drags her to an event, and Wave says that this is an event with a love guru who's like the best of the best. And Wave is wanting to find a girlfriend, and she says that Peyton might as well also try and find a girlfriend. They go to this event, and they run into Elaina, because Elaina is best friends with the love guru, Tyler. And Peyton and Elaina have a conversation at the event. This is where Elaina finds out that Peyton is gay, and she makes kind of a fool of herself, being like, I think that's fine, that's great. I voted no on Prop 8. Just kind of trying to show her support, but like she's so far out of her element that she doesn't really know what she's doing. And then from there, the story really blossoms into Elaina and Peyton become friends, and then they quickly become best friends, and then they become more than friends? And then it's like, how far can this go before they inevitably get caught? This film, like Loving Annabelle, I think does take a few risks, and I think think it does a much better job at the risks in presenting them in not a harmful way. The characters are taking huge risks. Elaina is married. She's married to a pastor who is very anti-gay, and she's trying to explore this queer relationship with another woman. Peyton knows that Elaina up to this point has considered herself straight, and she's still taking a risk trying to pursue her, but also keep her distance because she doesn't want to get hurt herself. The film itself takes some risks because in addition to telling this story between Peyton and Elaina and their relationship, we also get these like documentary-esque clips where Tyler, the love guru, comes in and talks about telemetry, which is, I think, a word that was made up for this movie. The idea of telemetry is that you kind of need to throw away everything that you know about love, because when you see the person who you are meant to love, like you'll know that that is your soulmate. There is a twin flame on earth for everyone, and you just need to find them. It should be really easy. Not easy necessarily to find them, but easy once you find each other. It's like, this is what love is supposed to be. It's just kind of an immediate connection. So we get Tyler every once in a while coming in and talking to us about telemetry, talking to us about the idea that love is so powerful that when you see it, you know immediately. So they have these like documentary-esque clips where they're interviewing people who tell you their story of how they fell in love, which is, I think, a risk in and of itself because it feels like it interrupts the film. Like suddenly Tyler's sitting there and you're like, why is Tyler here? And then suddenly there's just this random couple talking and you're like, why is this random couple talking? Another risk that I think they take from the filmmaking perspective is this film, at one point, I don't know if it still does, I didn't look it up, held a record for the longest unbroken kiss, which I think is saying something because it wasn't just the longest unbroken kiss between two women in a film, it was the longest unbroken kiss, like, ever in a film. So we're showing the intimacy between two women, and also that intimacy is lasting so long. Even with the actors, you're getting them taking risks. I watched a behind-the-scenes clip. Peyton has a friend named Wave in the film, and I watched this behind-the-scenes clip where they were like, Wave, the actress who played Wave, the entire time was just like improvising. So some of her funniest lines are just her improvising things, which make the film so much better because she took the risk to say something like hoping it would be funny, and it comes across as funny. I think perhaps my favorite risk that they take in the film, though, is with some of the costumes. So Elaina has a son, Nash. Nash is a teen boy, and he has a girlfriend named Tori. And Tori is supposed to be this like weird, quirky church girl. I've watched this movie several times now, and I was on maybe my, 10th rewatch when I burst out laughing when Tori came on the screen once, because I was like, I've never noticed the combination of things that she is wearing right now, and it is so ridiculous, but it is also so accurate to what like a weird, quirky church girl would be wearing. I think the characters making risky decisions makes you really invested in the story. I think the filmmakers making these interesting decisions about the film itself keep you kind of guessing, like, what is happening right now? Watching the actors make their own decisions about how their characters would act, it's a risk, but it plays out well. Wave is so funny, especially in her improvised moments. And then, of course, the costume design is so outlandish, but it's so accurate that you're just like, yes, this is how it would actually happen if this were happening in real life. Another thing that I think is really interesting about this film is the way that it portrays the differences between a relationship between two women and a relationship between a man and a woman. The main thing that I see is that the relationship between the woman and a woman is depicted as like so soft, so intimate, so warm and loving. Where the relationship with a man is depicted as this man is like a brute. He's a lot. There is a scene very early on in the movie where they're trying to have a child, so they show Elaina and her husband having sex, and it is jarring. It is jarring to watch because it's so like, he's just going at it, and she's there, and she doesn't really want to be there, and you're like, can he stop, please? There's one point in the movie where Elaina is talking to Peyton, and she's talking about her relationship with Barry, and she says, quote, I don't think I've ever been in love with him. I think sometimes marriage is just a series of compromises that... And then she trails off. And I think that's a really good summary of the relationship that she has with Barry. She sees it as she needs to sacrifice things in order for this relationship to work, and it's still not really working. In this film, you're getting the main character asking herself, what even is love? I've been married to this man for 15 years, we have a child together, we're trying to have another child together, but I don't think I love him. And she gets flung so far into, I think I love Peyton, that it's such a shock to her system that she doesn't even have words for what is happening to her. She doesn't know what's going on. The whole time you're like, this feels better. The relationship that they're showing between Elena and Peyton feels more correct. It feels like love is supposed to feel. Whereas with Barry, it feels like it's an obligation. Sex is an obligation for Elena in this relationship with Barry, when with Peyton, sex is something that is freeing. On a scale of 1 to 10, I would rate the movie Elena Undone an 8 out of 10. I originally rated it a 7, and then I watched it about 6 more times, and I was like, I think an 8. I think the biggest detriments are, again, the weird, telemetry documentary things. I do think they serve a purpose. I do think they serve a purpose of furthering the plot, but it's just strange watching it actually happen, because you're like, why are we talking to just these 2 random people who aren't characters in the film? But it does serve a purpose, I just don't like it. I do understand that it wouldn't be for everyone. It is a very slow burn, and at times you can be like, can something happen already? It's gonna happen, please just happen already. With, Bloomington, the main characters are having sex within the first 15 minutes of the film. But with Elena Undone, the main characters don't even kiss each other until nearly an hour into the film. So if you are gonna watch this is one where you need to, sit down and, buckle up. You're gonna be here for a while, but I think the film does a really good job at taking the risks and being a film that you get really invested in, and you're really invested in the relationship and you want things to work out. You really start to root for the characters and want things to work out between them. I do have one more film and one more book to get to, but I've finished my caffeinated sparkling water and I am running out of steam. So it'll be just seconds for you, but I'm gonna go and come back to this another night. And just like that, I am back. Today I have an uncaffeinated sparkling water, and I'm just hoping that my second cup of coffee that I had a couple hours ago just kind of pushes me through this. And the 6th and final film that I would like to talk about today is the film Carol. Carol takes place in the 1950s, so it follows a character whose name you can guess, Carol, and Therese. Therese works at a department store. She works as a counter clerk, and Carol comes up to her counter one day, orders something from her counter, and then leaves her gloves on the counter. Therese decides that she is going to return the gloves, so she mails them to her because she has her address, which is not at all creepy. And then when Carol finds out it was in fact Therese who mailed the gloves to her, she invites her to lunch, and from there we get this story of Therese and Carol having this friendship, but it's such a weird friendship because they have nothing in common. Carol is in the process of getting a divorce, and so she and her husband are in this custody battle. So in addition to the plotline between Carol and Therese starting this friendship, we also get Carol is in a custody battle with Harge. And we find out through the course of the film that the main issue in the custody battle is that Carol has a history of being with women. And so people are saying that shows that she has poor morality. She has bad morality. She is a bad person because she has been with women before. And so Harge is fighting for sole custody of their daughter. Well, Carol is like, no, she would be best with me because I am her mother. So we get all of this arguing, and Carol needs to get away. She needs to get away from everything. So she asks Therese, I'm gonna go west and just kind of drive and see where my car takes me. Do you want to come with me? And that's where kind of everything interesting in the film happens. They go on a road trip, and you're like, when is it gonna happen? Because there's obviously some undertones here. You know that they're interested in each other, but it's such a taboo thing because we're in the 1950s and neither of them really has the language to explain what they're feeling or what is happening. They can understand that they have feelings for each other, but they don't understand it from the sense of a socially acceptable thing. They can see that this is not okay for them to do or be in public, but it also at the same time feels so right. I absolutely adore this movie. One of the things that is a deterrent to a lot of people is the fact that this is a period piece. It takes place in the 1950s. So we're not watching modern women. We're watching Cate Blanchett. She's the most modern woman that you could see. But we're watching Cate Blanchett play a woman in the 50s. And a lot of people don't like that because it's like, you're not even going to tell us stories that are happening now, which I do understand that perspective. But at the same time, I think it's important to recognize that people have been gay forever. And so this is a story where we're like, hey, this is maybe what a gay relationship might have looked like in the 1950s. I like the idea that we are showing a queer story taking place in a time frame where you maybe wouldn't think queer people existed then. And I watched a few different behind the scenes clips where there were interviews with the director and the actors. And something that came up in those was the idea of Therese and Carol. They don't have the language to express what is happening. They don't have the language to say, I have been with a man up until this point, but I think maybe actually a woman, it might be better suited for me. I don't think at any point in this film they even say the word gay. It just never comes up. It's not a word that exists in either of their vocabularies. They don't have the language to explain what is happening to them. They can say that they're drawn to each other and they enjoy spending time with each other. They really connect, but it's not seen as a relationship. This is something that is so far out there for both characters. Even Carol, who we know has had past experiences with women, she's still so unsure of herself in this relationship. So the whole film is really exploring how do we navigate a relationship where neither of us exactly understand what's happening, but we know that we want to be near each other. We maybe know that we want to be with each other, but we don't have the words to describe that to ourselves, let alone anyone else. I think this film is beautifully done. It was shot on cameras, old-timey cameras, so it does have a particular grain to it. So it really does feel like you're watching something out of the 1950s. I also think the actors do a wonderful job. You have Cate Blanchett, who's Cate Blanchett. Need I say more? And then you have Rooney Mara, who I think is kind of a newer face for Hollywood. I'm so not connected to Hollywood. That could be entirely wrong. I would consider her a newer face to Hollywood, and she does a beautiful job portraying this character who so doesn't know what she wants, and she's trying to come into herself and find herself. I think the soundtrack is incredible. This is a film that relies really heavily on music to convey the mood of things. When they're having intimate moments, it gets softer, and then when the intimate moments are maybe picking up, it starts to get louder again, and you get really invested in, oh my goodness, the music swells at all of the right times to make you feel things. Honestly, this is one of my all-time favorite movies. And on a scale of 1 to 10, I would give it a 9. And I only say 9 because I'm not sure if I would ever say that a movie is actually a 10 out of 10. I think, however, this is as close as I have seen to a 10 out of 10 film. And something that I think also should be discussed when we're talking about the film Carol is the book that it's based off of. The book is called The Price of Salt, or Carol, by Patricia Highsmith, and I have a physical copy of it. I got this several years ago at a Pride event, and I was so excited because I had already seen the movie Carol and I loved it. So I was obviously I'm going to read the book and it's going to be great. And then I never read it. Once I decided that I was going to make this video, I was well, maybe I should probably read that book so I can have a really informed perspective on the movie Carol. And even though this book, it was fine, I gave it a 3.5 out of 5, I am so glad that I read it. Not only because do I feel like it gives me a better understanding of the characters in the movie Carol, but I feel like it relates so much to all of these films that I have been talking about. In the age-old discussion of book versus movie, for this particular piece of media, I would choose movie. However, there are some things about the book that I really enjoy. So the book does a really good job of, I know that the movie is called Carol. It focuses a lot on Carol as a character. In the book, we get, I would argue, a lot more exploration of Therese as a character. Therese is really the main character, and we get to see her exploring herself and who she wants to become. That does come across on the screen too, but I think it's better depicted in the book. Another thing that I think makes more sense in the book than it does in the movie is Carol has a friend named Abby, who is played by Sarah Paulson in the movie, and in the book, we get a lot more of the exploration of the relationship between Abby and Therese. In the movie, they have some interactions, and they just, like, don't quite make sense. You're just kind of like, why is Sarah Paulson here right now? And they try and explain it, and it just doesn't quite connect. It makes much more sense having read the book. There is at least one missing scene where you're like, oh, had this been in the movie, I would have understood this much more. But moving on from the age-old discussion of movie versus book, the thing that I found really interesting was how much the book connected to literally every piece of media that I have discussed. The thing that I think connects all of these pieces of media together is this particular quote from the book. Were human relationships like this always? Therese wondered. Never solid ground underfoot, always like gravel, a little yielding, noisy, so the whole world could hear, so one always listened to, for the loud, harsh step of the intruder's foot. Everything in all of these relationships is so unstable all of the time that it causes a lot of stress for our characters. In something like Adam, the relationship is so unstable because you know that Adam is living a lie. He is lying to everyone around him. In something like Loving Annabelle, the relationship is so unstable because it's, a teacher and a student who have this forbidden love affair. In something like Carol, the relationship is so unstable because Therese is still trying to find herself and Carol is in a custody battle and she is gay in a time when it is not okay to be gay. And another thing that I think connects most of these pieces of media is the idea of being afraid while in love and how that is, one, so unfair, but two, so prominent. In something like Saving Face, they are afraid, well, specifically Will is really afraid to admit that she is in a relationship because she knows that it's not going to be accepted by everyone around her. In Saving Face, Will has come out to her mother before and her mother has said no. Like, that's not true. As if her mother can just decide that her child's not gay. But from that point on, she's living this fear of, I am still gay, I am still in this relationship with a woman, but I don't feel that I can be fully and authentically myself. In Elena Undone, the audience knows that something is coming. We know that there's going to be a scene at some point where someone finds out that Elaina is having an affair with a woman. And they have this fear of, once this is inevitably found out, what do we do? How do we even navigate that? How am I going to get my friends and my family to understand that I have fallen in love with a woman while I am married to a man, and I am actively with that man trying to have another child? And at the same time, despite all of the fear of being found out, the characters in most of these films all still see love as a good thing. They see love as something that they should work towards, something that they want to strive for. There's another quote that I would like to read you from this book, and this is in a letter that Carol writes to Therese. I say I love you always, the person you are and the person you will become. I would say it in court if it would mean anything to those people or possibly change anything, because those are not the words I am afraid of. Carol, in this relationship, she loves Therese, and she is willing to risk everything for her. There is a scene in Elena Undone where Elena's son finds out that she is having a relationship with Peyton, this forbidden relationship, and they have this heartfelt one-on-one moment, and afterwards Elena goes to Tyler's and she is crying in his arms because she loves Peyton so much and she knows that Peyton brings her so much joy, but she doesn't know how she can go about devastating everything that she loves, everything that she knows, everything that she has lived up to this point, just for love. And Tyler tells her, this is a gift that you have been given. I know that it is so incredibly scary to do this, but this is worth it for love. The thing that I really love about Carol and The Price of Salt and some of these other pieces of media is that we're really exploring the idea of this love is not seen as acceptable, but at the same time, we in the relationship know that this is good. This is something that we should strive towards. When I was going through the actual book and looking at things that I had underlined and wanted to come back to, this is the thing that I wanted to come back to the most, this particular quote. This is at a time where Carol and Therese, they have admitted that they have feelings for each other and they are now laying in bed together. Carol's head was close against hers, and she did not have to ask if this was right. No one had to tell her, because this could not have been more right or perfect. The thing that I think really connects all of these pieces of media in a really beautiful way is the idea of the main characters in pretty much every single one of these pieces of media. They are being told that their love is not acceptable. In some instances, there are pretty good reasons why it's not acceptable, such as I am a cisgender man pretending to be a transgender man so I can date a lesbian. Or I am a teacher and a student who are having a forbidden love affair. Like, those are reasons that I think it would be valid to call out, hey, what are you doing? But in some of the other pieces of media, like Elena Undone, Carol, and Saving Face, the main issue is you are two women in a relationship with each other and you are being told that is not okay because you are two women in a relationship with each other. All of these characters, they are being told continuously, this is not okay, you are not okay, this is not acceptable because of X, Y, and Z. And all of the characters have that moment where they're like, no, hold on, wait a minute. What we're talking about here is that I love this person. And you are telling me that it is wrong that I love this person, not because of like an actual issue, but because we are both women in this relationship. And I think that's silly. And then the characters go on and they live their lives. And they don't accept the silliness. They don't accept the ridicule of you cannot be who you are. Overall, like, I really enjoyed seeking out these pieces of queer media and watching them and drawing connections between them. I think it's really interesting how these films are all so incredibly different from each other, and there are still the same undertones in a lot of them. We really get the idea of your love is bad, and the characters say, no, it's not, it's love. We really get all of the characters saying, I maybe don't have language to describe what exactly is happening, or language that other people will understand, but I'm not going to let that stop me from living my life and being in love with the person who I want to be in love with. I guess saying it out loud, it sounds kind of cheesy to be like, I enjoyed these love stories because they're about love. But really, I think it's more than just these are love stories, it's that specifically these are queer love stories. These are characters that we need more of. Some of them. I don't think we need more cisgender men pretending to be trans men so they can date lesbians. I don't think we ever need any more of that. Nor do I think we need more teacher-student relationships. But I think we could use more media where queer people are depicted in relationships, period. And also, I think we could use more media where queer people are depicted in relationships where they are happy. I'm not really sure how to end a video, but I would like to stop talking now, so I'm gonna leave.